Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on this little oil painting. I worked on a couple of different studies over the weekend and finished up one that I had been slowly working on for months actually. So I decided that I wanted to do a piece that was going to be still ocean themed because I was really in that mode. I really enjoyed that. And I wanted to do something that had a figure in it that I could actually get done within a couple of days of work, because that last one, I spent a lot of time repainting things and second guessing myself, and ultimately it ended up taking a lot of time that wasn't necessary for it to actually be finished. I was just not really confident yet with my oil painting choices, so I decided that I would just sit down and paint out a painting with a face on it and try to get it just done nice and quick in less than a week, so that way I could get some movement in my oil paintings so that I can get past that and know that I can actually accomplish something relatively in a normal pace. And yeah, if you want to see that picture that I'm talking about, the one that I've worked on for months, and if you want to see one of the studies from over the weekend, I have that over on my Instagram. There's a link in the description, so you can go check that out. But anyways, today, again, I wanted to focus on painting a character near the ocean. So of course it made sense to paint a mermaid. You can't see any of her mermaid parts, but she is a mermaid. That's what I had in my head. And I wanted her to have this very wet, almost luminous from the inside kind of a look. So as I was painting her skin, I was really trying to think about that and consider that. I made a new Pinterest board where I had the reference of the actual face that I drew from, and then I had a reference for the way that the lighting and the shadows, how that was actually colored, which was a totally different reference. And then I had another reference for how this really luminous makeup effect, I guess you could say, for on this model, where the way that the light was hitting it just looked really pearlescent, really beautiful. So between those three references I was working off of to get this kind of skin result. And I do think that it mostly worked. The issue was that I didn't have as clear of a trajectory as I would have liked. So jumping in with the skin, it kind of ended up being where I was like stumbling in the dark at first, and I was like, I don't really know if this is working, but in the end it actually did, and I was happy with that. So yeah, moving forward, this kind of technique of cobbling together different references I think will definitely work, but it will help if I take a little bit more time to study them and have a very clear plan going forward. One thing that I have noticed in my admittedly very few attempts at painting skin is that at the beginning, when I'm placing just like shadows down and highlights down before I've really blended anything together, it feels like there's more color and more vibrancy to it. And then as I blend things together and finish painting it, it tends to look less color varied. The shadows tend to look just like a darker version of the main color, and I'd like to be able to make sure that I'm preserving those color variations a little bit better. So specifically, eventually in the shadow under her face on her neck, I started off with just this purple color. So everything was really monochromatic at the beginning, and I decided it needed some more variations in the colors. So I brought in a blue to that shadow, and I loved how it looked. And as I was blending it out, it did end up losing some of that blueness. So I think that I needed to go back in there and add some more of those specific colors to specific areas, and then I could be careful to blend the edges of it so that it still had that really soft transition that I was looking for, but it didn't wash out the color or mute it altogether. And a couple weekends ago, I was able to go to a conference for writing and art. It's LTE. If you happen to live near Utah, you might have heard of it, but anyways, while I was there, I was able to meet Howard Lyon, and he works entirely in oils. His work is incredible and beautiful, but he had a 3-hour live painting demo, which I was able to be there for, and he had some really helpful little points of advice. One of the things that was kind of a game changer for me is he talked about how his pacing for when he's working on his paintings is he doesn't have to wait that long for each layer to dry before he can do the next layer. He just waits until it's tacky to the touch, basically, and then he can apply more paint on top of it. And for me, I had this locked in idea that I had to wait until it was touch dry before I could paint on top of it again. So I would wait a lot longer than that before those layers were dry and I could add more. But he was talking about how he could just wait until it got tacky and then it would allow more paint to go on top, instead of it being like when you're trying to add wet paint on top of wet paint and it just can't take any more paint until it just dries. And I did that with this painting and it was just so quick, where there were some areas that I could paint on it the same day it was that tacky. It does help that I do have a big tube of titanium white that's in the fast dry formula, which I don't remember exactly what medium is mixed in the paint, but there is one that does help it dry pretty quickly. And because that paint, it's white, it's mixed into most everything that I end up using, it does help most of the paint dry a little bit faster than most. So that's actually really helpful. But yeah, it was so nice to be able to hear that. I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But it's okay, because there's so many things like that where you don't really think of it until you have that little breakthrough, and then you're able to move on from that. Another thing that he mentioned, which was kind of like, oh, so that's why it doesn't work when I try to do that, is that and this is probably obvious, but he likes to keep his blending brushes, or a specific blending brush that never touches any of the solvent. I use Gamsol, but none of the paint thinner, so that when he goes into blend, it doesn't have the solvent, so it doesn't eat away at the paint that's already there. And I've made that mistake so many times, enough times that I probably should have learned that lesson already, but hearing him say that, I was like, oh, I should have been doing that all along. So now I make sure that I have a couple brushes in a few different sizes that are big and fluffy for blending that just never touch that Gamsol, so that I can go in and blend it and it doesn't eat away at the paint. And I wish I could say that was a little bit more planned out. I had my basic attack plan, but really with this piece, I felt like I was just jumping right in and stumbling through it a little bit. I do think that with oils, I sit on two sides. I found that some pieces I sit there and I over plan it and I take forever to finally work on it and finish it, like the one that I talked about at the beginning, or I just kind of jump in, and because I know that it's oils and now that I've experienced it a little bit more, I know that I can fix it or change it. I have a little bit more of a habit of just jumping in and painting it, and I don't know. I think that it's definitely going to be a painful experience at one of these points, but luckily with this piece, it just kind of came together. All of the components ended up working together. I do think it'll become easier to plan things out once I get a better handle of how different paints actually work and how the pigments mix together when they're blended. With oils, I do find that it's harder for me to piece together a color comp, and I probably should be just sitting down and painting an actual color comp like I do with my watercolors. But yeah, anyways, that probably is my next step of getting better at my oils, is actually doing a quick test run or even a color comp so that I can know what I'm getting myself into. But I do have to say, it is something that I get really excited about, and that's that I can just jump in and see where something takes me, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. I just have to let it dry and then I can paint over it again. It's actually an extremely liberating way to work on a piece after working solely in watercolors and forcing myself to work in a very limited way. It feels just so exciting to be able to work on that. Like with this one, I didn't really have a plan at the very beginning on how I wanted the coloring on the shell in her hair to look, but once I got to that point, I felt like I just wanted to add in just a little bit of a new color and introduce it a little bit so that it had a little bit more pop to it. So I added, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but one of my greens, I added that a little bit to the edges, and since I had it out and I was really liking that, I decided to add a little bit into the iris of the character's eyes, and it felt really exciting that it was something that right in that moment, as I was working with it, I could add more to it. I could connect it to other places, and I could see this piece adapt as I was working on it, rather than having to have a a very extremely clear view of how it's going to end up from the very beginning. And then I just wanted to go back in and add those final really sharp contrasted highlights and any really dark shadows that needed re-emphasized. I found that that's something that that when I'm working in oils, I tend to need to go back and readdress certain areas, places that just got softened in the blending process and didn't have that same depth or contrast that it needed to the surrounding areas. But yes, I decided to let it mostly or basically dry before I moved on to some of these details because I wanted to be able to remove it if I messed it up, like some of the highlights in the hair and some of the hair strands where it would be overlapping areas that if I messed up that piece of hair or I didn't like how it looked, I would have to either live with it or totally repaint that area. So yes, it's good for me to be able to plan those areas out and know that I can let everything else behind it be rock solid and done, and then I can add those details on top and erase them if I need to. And by the end of this video, she is almost completely done. I got most of what I wanted down, but I do want to go back in and add some pearls into her hair. That's what I had planned from the beginning, and I really like that idea. And fix up just a few minor things, but yeah, if you would like to see where the final ends up looking like and also watch me varnish her, then make sure to follow me over on Instagram. I have a link in my description that'll take you there. And that's where I'll put the first notice too for when she is officially available at my shop. So if you're interested in purchasing this original painting, then yes, make sure that you follow me over there so you can get that first notice of when she'll be up and live and everything. But yeah, I'm very excited to finish this one up, and I've had a lot of fun painting this one. And that's it for today. If you are interested in owning the original, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'll also put a notice up on Patreon too, and on Instagram for when she goes live at my shop. So yeah, those are the first places that you'll get some information on when she'll be available. But yeah, I am so excited to finish this one up. I really loved painting her. I will also be putting a print of her in the package for my February package patrons. So it's too late to sign up for this one if you wanted a print, but if you want to see what you can get in the package for the month of March or get a postcard or anything else, then make sure to check out my Patreon link down in the description. You guys who are my patrons, I can't give you a big enough thank you. You all help me to be able to make more artwork and make these videos, so thank you so much for that. But that's it for today, so I will be back next week with another art video, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you then.